Welcome to Helping Organizations Thrive. My guest today is Claire Chandler. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you, Julian. It's great to be here.
So I'm going to introduce you to the audience so they know a bit more about you, but obviously we're going to ask you some questions and get to know you in a real sort of meaningful way. So you are the architect of profitable swagger. You are a business growth and strategic leadership advisor. You're a founder, you're a keynote speaker, and you're an author of 2 books. So more than an expert on here, which is what I like to have. And I'm very privileged and honored to have you. And it's wonderful that you sort of gave it your time to sort of be on the show today. So the first question, and I always ask my guests, because I'm really interested in what makes them buzz and what gets them out of bed in the morning, is what do you love about what you do?
I honestly love the breakthroughs. There's this magical moment that happens when I work with clients on aligning their leadership and helping them improve their focus and helping them get closer to achieving their mission. But I do all of that not so much by what I bring in, but what I draw out of the clients, right? And there's always this moment that I live for where a client just sort of, you see that light go on within them. And it's not so much the realization, it's the breakthrough that comes through that realization, that aha moment, that the answers that they've been struggling to find were within them all along. So that's what gets me, leaping out of bed in the morning to do what I do.
Fantastic. So seeing people realize that moment that then creates the transformational or the executional piece that will take them on under their own steam, because obviously you don't stick around in terms of that sort of context.
That's the plan, is to get rid of me so that they can sort of do this on their own and continue the journey in the right direction. That's right.
Yeah. And how are you, in terms of facilitating that, how are you doing that with clients? Have you got any sort of recent examples, obviously confidential, but that would elicit that sort of breakthrough moments?
Yeah, the starting point for me with every client is the same, albeit unique, for their own situation, but it's always about clarity of mission. And that always sounds very simplistic when I say that, but you would be surprised how many companies have lost their way, have lost sight of what is that horizon that they're striving for. And especially in the year that we're living in the age that we're living in, it is so easy to get distracted by the near-term noise and conflicts and crises. So bringing that leadership, the executive team on down, back together and refocusing them on where they are trying to get to over the long haul, is so important in getting them refocused on that clarity. That is foundational, not just to surviving as a business, but to thriving and sustaining growth over the long term. So that is always my starting point with any client, is getting to that mission clarity.
And that's really important, because I think a lot of organizations have mission, vision, whatever you want to call it, in terms of, and either they don't believe it, or they don't know it, or it was created a long time ago and they just don't buy into it. And it also ties into our own purpose. But in an organization, it's so important to get that clarity, because it's something when things are not going as they seem to, and it's been a year of things not going as they seem to, your mission always stays the same broadly. It's just the how bit of how you're getting there may have changed. Instead of going to a client now face to face, you'll go online. Yeah. So it's just the execution piece is very different. And I agree that starting point is important, because I think often people run away trying to do all the strategies, and then you end up with this almost not headless chicken, but slightly fragmented approach. Now we are in an interesting year, and we can't not talk about it, because we just talked offline a minute ago how this is really a long haul, really. You know, what we're in now is not a short-term crisis, it's a long-term crisis. And I'd be really interested to understand from your perspective, and also perhaps some of your clients you've been working with, how we can help motivate our teams, our individuals in our organizations right now, because it's pretty tough. You know, in the UK, we've just gone into a lockdown again, and there's various other things happening around the world. And it's, how do you keep people going from a personal point of view, but also from an organization? And I think it's something that'd be really valuable to sort of explore a little bit more.
Yeah, and this is a conversation I'm having with every new client and every existing client. You know, we were talking offline about, you know, where we were back in March, and a lot of people were assuming or planning for or just being hopeful that this was going to be a very short-term blip. If you recall in the beginning, this was going to be a 2-week nuisance that disrupted our lives, right? And now we'll be lucky if it's in our rearview mirror in 2 years. And I think, you know, I'm a very optimistic person, but I think that the realist side of me has to acknowledge that the ripple effect of this, even if there's a vaccine, you know, by the end of the year, the ripple effect of this will be felt for years to come. So I'm having this conversation with new clients, with existing clients, and they've all kind of gotten to the same bit of self-discovery, which is, wow, you know, when things really did hit the fan in the spring, and it became apparent that this was not going to be a 2-week disruption, but a much more long-term challenge and crisis that we have to live and operate our business in parallel with, right? That point of self-discovery was, you know, the team really came together beautifully to do a lot of firefighting, right? And we hear that so often, that companies are very good at fighting the fire that's directly in front of them, right? Marshaling the resources, putting aside their, you know, their petty squabbles and complaints, and getting things done. And every one of those clients who is at that point of self-discovery is also realizing that while we are great at firefighting, it's a skill we've clearly always had, but it's burning us out. It is, you know, there is only so long that rush of adrenaline will be something that we can rely upon. And at some point, we are going to get to the point of not just fatigue, that we keep operating in this firefighting mode, but absolute burnout. So every client that I'm having this conversation with is now at the point where they're saying, okay, we have to shift gears again. It can't be all about just fighting the fire that's directly in front of us, or whatever fires or flames that the pandemic is continuing to, you know, to ignite. We have to get back to that long-term view and that long-term planning, because this knocked us back on our heels for a bit, but we have to get back to the business that we were in and find a better way to work together, to grow, to remain profitable, to scale, all of those things with and through the resources and the talents and the energy and the efforts of our people. And if they're going to be burnt out, then we can't achieve that. So that's the conversation that I'm having literally with all of my clients now. How do we get back to business, so to speak? So it's, you know, it's always been, you know, to me, that strategic mindset, that long-term vision, and planning toward that goal, right? Shaping strategies that are truly long-term. You know, I always laugh at companies who say, oh, we've got this long-term strategic plan. Well, how far out does it go? Oh, it goes until, you know, at least 18 months. That's not a long-term strategy, right? And that's not going to get you, you know, to where you need to be. So that is a key gap for a lot of those same companies that are finding that they have been super effective at firefighting, are really seeing and feeling and suffering from the gap in their long-term strategic thinking.
Okay, so it's going from that short-term firefighting, which we've all been doing, and a lot of organizations have been doing, and I think it's starting to, I guess, getting back to, I'm not using the word business as usual, but more long-term, lifting your gaze a bit further out. Now, I agree with that, but I guess I think what people find really difficult is, because I did a lot of stuff with businesses where we were just looking at 90 days. This was about 6 months ago, which was good enough because the context we were in, and things are starting to settle. And I think you're right too. It's not being negative. It's not being unrealistic. And my definition of optimism is rooted in reality, but now having a view on the future that's positive. That's how it's not pie and sky type of thing. So how do we get people into that place where they're away from the firefighting and starting to plan a little bit more, a bit further out, even though they look out further out and they just can't see a way through, and they just see a mass of uncertainty still? How do we sort of help that, or do we plan with uncertainty? I mean, how do we sort of reconcile that? Because it is quite difficult. And having worked in many businesses where we do your 3-5 year strategic plan and update every year type of thing. Now, I mean, the landscape is changing very much by the week now in terms of how do we get to that place with leaders? I'm really intrigued at your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it is so. To say it's difficult is an understatement. It is so difficult to remain optimistic, right? As a business, certainly as leaders of that business, but we have to, right? And you used a very good combination there. You said, optimistic with some realism. This can't be rose-colored glasses. Oh, everything's going to be all right in the end. Wishful thinking, right? You can be optimistic, but your optimism has to be fueled by a plan. This is where playing for the long game really does become not just a priority, but an essential element for survival, right? And here's the thing. Every single business, if you've been in business for long enough, you have come across some sort of a setback, crisis, a challenge, and never before have we on a global scale been up against something that is so universally impacting business, but also so universally shared as a challenge, right? If you look around at what's going on, and we promised each other we were not going to go down the political road, but just in terms of all of the disruptions in the market, in the economy, on the global scale, it's so easy to get pulled into the near-term negative and that near-term firefighting. That's not where the optimism is, right? The optimism is in looking down the road and seeing the horizon and reconnecting with why that was so important to pursue in the first place. And again, it's there's this concept of it's simple but not easy, right? You were talking about the why, a company's purpose may not significantly change over the years. I would suspect for a lot of businesses, the opposite is true because of what the pandemic has done, has knocked the world off its axis, right? So, that first step of mission clarity or refocus or reclarifying or even redefining what we are in business to accomplish has to happen because it may have changed, right? So one of two things pretty much has happened. Either because of our short-term firefighting, we have lost sight of that long-term horizon, or because of this global fire that we are fighting, that long-term horizon is no longer important to us, achievable to us, et cetera, right? You were looking for an example before. So I was sitting with a client, a relatively new client, and in the beginning of the year, we sat down in person because you could still do that at that time. And we were talking about that first step of mission clarity. And we were in a room where literally their mission statement and their core values were hanging on a very nice sign on the wall. This is the same mission and same core values that they have had since the founding of the company, a couple of decades ago. And when I asked them, does everyone in your company believe in, understand, embrace that mission, demonstrate those values, and see a connection between what they bring to the table and how it advances the mission? The leaders of the company kind of turned around and looked at the sign to refamiliarize themselves, right? To kind of remind themselves what that mission actually said, but then said, yeah, you know what? It's been a while since we've looked at that. We probably need to take a fresh look at, that statement. And that's where you call a sort of a flag on the play, right? Because your mission shouldn't be a statement. Your mission should be a beacon, right? A guiding principle, something that you measure every single decision you make, every person you hire, every communication you issue around, does this advance our mission? So this is a transformative year for every business, for every country, for every individual, and it is incumbent upon all of us to re-examine, is that horizon still relevant, still important to us? If the answer is yes, then let's use this as an opportunity to bring everyone back together and to readjust what it means to get there, why that's important, and how we do it, because obviously that has changed for most companies. If the answer is no, that's also an exciting opportunity, because again, you want to bring everyone together and say, let's reevaluate based on where we are, where we've come from, where we truly want to go, and how we get there. So that's how you kind of lead forward with optimism, by seizing whatever that answer is. Is our purpose still valid, or is it not, as an opportunity to bring people together. A crisis like this, a crisis that is even more localized, as an optimistic person, I always look for the silver lining. I always look for, where's the opportunity in the crisis? And here is a huge opportunity for every business, every company, every team, and every leadership structure to bring their people together and help unify them and get them focused on a horizon that they feel like they had a meaningful role in determining.
Wow, that's very powerful stuff. I like that. It's really insightful. And it's interesting. We went almost back to the very start of our conversation about getting mission clarity, which feels to me one of the most powerful things to do, which sets your sail to where you're going to right now and gives you that long-term view. And then I guess working back on that, and this is where I think organizations have got to be a little bit more agile, is yes, you have that mission and you have a plan. And I think by doing the whole process of planning a 3-5 year creates that more of a mindset of future, thriving, positive, going towards something, being more creative. It does something with a sense of, because I do a lot of resilience work, with a sense of, but it might not be as we expected. 5 years ago when you did a plan, there's probably a little bit more certainty, not always, on the market you're in, of how you're going to deliver stuff, and we navigated along. But now there might be a little bit more uncertainty, and just being a bit more agile, I guess, in that approach, and be more flexible, but still having that sight on that mission clarity. You talked about that organization where they obviously all turned around checking, what is it again? Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Every company does that. That was just the most recent.
Exactly. We've always done that. So once you've got that mission clarity, and whether you've re-established it because of the context we're in now, how do you sort of get it to become more of a living thing? Because it's right, it can come a statement. I know it gets written down, it gets put on website, and that's important, and words are important, but how does it become a thing, a culture, a way of doing things, and a way of checking that, is this a line? How do we get that in an organization?
Yeah. So there's really two main ways. The first way you do that is by involving as many people as possible in the formulation of that mission, or at least in the validation of that mission. So, with a lot of companies, that mission is already well established. It's communicated, to your point, on the website and on posters on the wall, et cetera. But it doesn't become a living, breathing thing until and unless the people in your organization truly feel and see a connection between what they do, the skills they have, the passion that they have, and how that's going to contribute toward the achievement of that mission. So that's the first piece, is to, if you're forming or revalidating a mission, involve as many people in your organization as possible. You largely will not be able to involve everyone, but at some point, you then need to carry that message throughout the organization, make sure that there is buy-in. And it's not this is where we're going, you're either on the bus or you're not. It's, this is where we're going, this is why it matters to us, and this is how it should matter to you, because there's a connection there, right? So that's kind of piece number one, fundamental number one. The second way is, once you have established that mission, and once you've either created it or clarified it, it absolutely has to become a living, breathing GPS, right? A guidance system for every single thing that you do. And I that sounds hyperbolic, but it is absolutely fundamental. If that is truly your why, your purpose, your long-term horizon, right? The holy grail that you are pursuing, it should and must serve as a filter, right? Serve as a measuring stick. Does this decision, right? So every decision you have, in terms of strategies that come into play, planning, investments that you make, clients that you engage with, employees that you hire, how you advance people, how you set, performance expectations, how you deliver feedback, all of that should constantly come back to, does this align with and help advance our mission? And if the answer is no, then why would you do it, right? So that mission clarity, I always harp on that. In every conversation I have, I harp on that, because it is so foundational and it's so fundamental. If that's truly going to be, your guidance, your guiding principle, your guidance, measuring stick, it has to enter into every conversation. It has to be what you hold yourself accountable to. So those are really the two kind of key elements to making sure that that is a living, breathing way of life within your business.
Yeah, and it's creating that sort of culture, so that connection, i.e. people buy into it or become part of it, depending on their contributes. And then I like that, using it as a some sort of GPS, perhaps significant decisions. Does this, what we're doing, align to where we're going, basically?
Right.
It sounds really simple and and really obvious, because I do it myself. My own purpose is to unlock leadership potential of 100,000 leaders. That's my purpose, mission. So everything I do, and I don't always, but often I'm out somewhere and thinking, does this really add to that? And I go, no, it doesn't. So I stop doing it. Yeah. And so that's a really valuable thing. Just out of curiosity, what is your sort of mission and sort of purpose, whether it's personally or business wise?
Yeah. So, personally, my mission is to live as full of a life as I possibly can, right, and share my gifts with the world. Whatever they are. So so that's kind of my personal mission, and that, of course, infects and informs what I do as a solopreneur and as a founder and all of that. So I literally do, with every client that I engage with, every, initiative that I sort of put out there into the world, I really kind of check it against, is this a vehicle, an opportunity, for me to play full out? I mean, that's truly it. And when I work with clients, it's not typically how I describe it to them, right? That we want them to play full out, but it's really this sense of clarity, yes, and alignment, right? Because if they don't have alignment within their company around this compelling, magnetic, big mission, then they're not, they're either not going to get to where they're going, or if they do, it's just going to be a sort of a blasé result because their why wasn't big enough in the first place. So that's really what kind of fuels me. Wow.
Excellent. I love that. So your personal one is, say your personal one again.
See, I don't know if I'm going to say it the same way.
No way.
It's really just living as big of a life as I can and sharing my gifts with the world.
Yeah. Okay. Which is what you're doing now, and it's you're sharing your gifts, you're sharing your insights, your knowledge, and all that. And that's brilliant, and I love that. Well, thank you for time. Just goes by. Thank you for being on the show, Claire. Now I know you've written 2 books, and I'd like you to share a little bit about those books,
Sure.
and also how people can get in touch with you. That would be really great if you could do that.
Excellent. Well, the most recent book, which came out earlier this year, I co-wrote with my good friend Ben Baker, and it is called Leading Beyond a Crisis, A Conversation About What's Next. As you could probably tell by the title, it is heavily informed by this global pandemic that we are living alongside of, but it really provides leaders with some insights and some conversation starters, really, about how to do some of the things we've just been talking about, right? How to keep, not just sane, but sustained and moving forward, as a team and as a business. So that came out earlier this year. My earlier book, which came out a couple of years ago, is called The Whirlpool Effect. And that is really written to, it speaks to leaders who are struggling a bit with finding their way and really building the business of their dreams. And it's largely because of factors completely within their own control. So that book kind of speaks to the shift in mindset that leaders really need to have to get to what's next.
Okay.
So anyone in your audience who is interested in those books, they are available on Amazon. You will also find links to them on my website, which is clairechandler.net. That's the best place to go to learn more about me, to hear podcasts like this that I've been on great conversations like the one we're having. And there's a bunch of free resources on there that leaders can go and download and immediately apply to bring more value to their business.
Brilliant, Claire. Well, we'll put that all in the show notes so people can just click on it and find you and connect with you. And I encourage people to connect with you, whether on LinkedIn or through your websites. Thank you for today. Really appreciate your candid conversation, and wishing you very well.
Thank you, Julian. It has been an absolute pleasure.